I planted a prairie garden in my backyard. Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm taking my suburban yard from basic to beautiful by removing lawn and adding in native plants. I'm sharing gardening projects here as I transform the space, so be sure and subscribe so you can follow along. So recently the weather turned unseasonably cool, and I realized I just don't have a lot more time to garden in this season. So I wanted to make sure that I got this prairie garden done this year. So the theme of this project, as you are about to see, is laziness. Pretty much every step of the way, you are gonna see me cutting corners and just getting this thing done as fast as I can. I really just wanted to get these plants in the ground, partly so they could get established before winter, but also because I had a lot of extra plants in pots that I was having to water, and I realized this would be a really good way to use them up and just not have to water them anymore. I'm telling you, it's laziness from top to bottom. So a little background. I had started a garden of prairie plants that became totally overrun with weeds. So I decided I'm just gonna start over, clean slate. So earlier this summer, I dug up all the plants that I could save from that garden, and I moved them over to a temporary home in the bed in front of my garage, and I tarped over the weed-infested area. So if you're interested in tarping or solarizing to prepare an area, let me know in the comments and I can do a video about it. Anyhow, over the summer, I actually came up with a new plan for my backyard. So I had initially planned to just redo the prairie garden in that tarped area, but then I realized that I don't like the way that this sidewalk sort of bisects my yard and this whole front to back axis that it creates. So I decided to expand the prairie garden to both sides of the sidewalk to kind of de-emphasize that sidewalk. So it's like a sidewalk through the garden instead of a line of demarcation between the lawn and the garden, and I'm into it. So with a plan in place, the first step to planting Prairie Garden 2.0 was to dig up those keepers from where I had been storing them all summer. Incidentally, this is the spot where my oak leaf hydrangea used to be. So this location absolutely bakes all day until about 5 p.m. So the prairie plants are gonna be much happier here than the hydrangea was. I got tired of digging up plants after a while, especially once I realized that A, some of these were just gonna go right back into this spot anyhow, and B, with every plant I dug, I now had even more plants that needed to be watered in containers. So, heeding the spirit of laziness that inspired this project, I called it quits about 2/3 of the way through. I also purposely did not dig up the rattlesnake master because I noticed that it really struggled when I transplanted it here at the beginning of the summer, and I didn't want to disturb it more than I needed to, and I figure it's fine here and I can start some more from seed to put in other areas. Next up was to remove the tarp and mark out the new prairie garden area. Incredibly, there were still things alive under that tarp when I took it off, specifically violets, spiderwort, and daylilies. I am still digging them up. I probably will be digging them up until I die. Anyhow, I also unfortunately discovered that the tarp had started to break down from being out in the sun all summer, and it shed just a ton of plastic particles all over the place. I don't think I will use the tarp method again for this reason. To make the new expanded bed, I needed to kill part of the lawn back here. So what I'm doing here is basically the cardboard and mulch smothering technique, but I like to use those rolls of board from the paint department that they sell for protecting your floors. It works really well, it's easy to put down, and you don't have to scavenge for boxes. A downside to any cardboard method is that cardboard contains PFAS or forever chemicals. I have said it before, I will say it again, there is no perfect method of prep. So now I have done this method before, but usually I wait till the next season to plant into it. That way the grass has all died and the cardboard has completely broken down. And that's definitely the best way to go. But I had heard about people planting straight into the cardboard, so I thought I'd give it a try for this project because lazy. Basically, what I'm doing here is overlapping the board by about 6 inches and then weighing it down with bricks and rocks. And I'm gonna leave that in place until the cardboard has fully broken down. Finally, it's planting time. Speaking of plants, let me quickly tell you what's going on in this garden. I have a vision for a somewhat stylized prairie planting here with a few non-natives in the mix to bring out the color palette that I'm hoping to achieve. In this case, I want to add in some dark red and burgundy tones inspired by the color of the echinacea cones. When I'm creating a planting design, I usually start with an idea for some combination of flowers and grasses, and then I work my way out to later and earlier parts of the season. Here, my kernel of inspiration was anise hyssop, rattlesnake master, purple coneflower, and a cultivar of monarda that has sort of made its way into my garden from my neighbor's yard. I believe it's raspberry wine monarda, not totally sure. I usually opt for straight species, but the bees have given it their seal of approval, plus it's helping add that deeper purple-red drama that I'm going after. Plus it's free. So for the grasses, I'm using little blue stem and side oats grama like I did in my front yard meadow. They fill in quickly and have really nice texture and contrasting color, especially as summer turns to fall. That little blue stem really goes blue. It's so pretty. Rounding out that mid-July combination will be mountain mint, showy milkweed, and prairie blazing star, along with non-native bronze fennel that gives a nice texture and will also help play up the burgundy notes that I'm trying to weave in. And then moving into late summer, we'll have some Rudbeckia fulgida and blue sage. I'm also adding in non-native sedum. I had one and then I made some cuttings from that plant. I'm not sure what it is. I think it might be night embers. Moving into fall, there's showy goldenrod, aromatic aster, and smooth blue aster. For late spring and early summer, I'm planting Ohio spiderwort, Penstemon digitalis, and some swamp milkweed that wasn't part of my original plan, but I had some extra, so I'm adding it in. Yes, it has swamp in the name, but it self-seeds all over my yard, even in medium moisture areas, so I think it will do just fine here. I also plan to add some non-native Salvia cardana because of the beautiful burgundy stems that it has, but I'm gonna add that in later. I didn't actually plant it, it's not here yet. And then in springtime, there's already a lot of trout lily and Virginia bluebells in here, plus I'm adding wild hyacinth bulbs and Slava tulips. My hope is that the tulips come up the same time as the hyacinth, but I'm not really sure. We'll just have to wait and see. By the way, I created a plant layout on paper, but I ended up just going with my gut and kind of putting things where it felt right in the moment. It's good to plan out a layout beforehand, but it's also important to be flexible. But I feel like having a good plan is what allows you to have that flexibility in the moment, if that makes any sense. Something I didn't think about with planting into the cardboard before it breaks down is that it can tear pretty easily. And the more it gets torn, the less effective it will be at smothering the grass. I eventually got a good technique going with cutting a hole with a box cutter and then digging a fairly neat and precise hole within that, but I'll definitely be getting some turf grass resprouting in here next year. It is what it is, and I think it's good enough that I can stay on top of the grass next season. The first day of planting, I laid out the flowering plants, but once they were planted, I needed to water them, and I was worried that would make the cardboard even harder to plant in. So the cardboard actually ended up being okay the second day when I planted the grasses. What was more difficult was the actual dirt. I have really heavy clay soil, and the watering caused it to just become really sticky and really hard to work. But the nice thing with using plugs and small plants like this is that they are so small that even with really sticky clay, you can still get them planted without too much trouble because you just don't need that big a hole. I need a path through here to access the bed for weeding and for maintenance. I found these bricks at an architectural salvage place, and I had planned to use them for a different project, but they didn't work for that, so I figured let's use them here. Since I had a limited number though, I started by roughly laying out the path and then gauging space and some sort of pattern based on how many bricks I had. As you can see, I am not properly making a path here. I'm just plunking bricks on the ground, and it's good enough for now. I will go back at some point and do it right. Maybe. Or maybe not. Really, I just need a path through here, and once the plants are bigger, you probably won't see it anyhow. After that, I mulched the beds to keep the moisture in the soil while the plants established. So like I was saying, mulch helps the soil retain moisture, but I only put a thin layer, enough to keep the soil moist while the plants are getting established. Eventually, the plants will create their own mulch through plant material dying and decaying. This ends up being better for wildlife as well because dead stems can be used for cavity nesting insects, and the patchwork of stems and leaves also creates little bare patches more often than that continuous layer of wood mulch would, and that allows ground nesting bees to access the bare soil. And here's what that looks like now. So the little white flags that you see are where I planted the wild hyacinth bulbs. My tulips haven't come yet, so I need to mark where I put those bulbs in. That way I don't accidentally dig them up when I plant the tulips. I love a good before and after, but I wouldn't describe this as an after. This is more like the birth of a garden. We will learn and grow with the garden. The plants will get bigger. They will reseed and move around and change in proportion. The garden will take on a life of its own, and I welcome that. I think it's equally true that as gardeners, we are editing and curating the space, but also that the plants are telling us what they can do, what they want to do, and we're watching and learning from them. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you again next time. Finally, it's planting time.